Welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the blueprint of life itself. We're going to scale the entire tree of life, from its widest branches all the way down to its molecular roots, to see how absolutely everything is connected.
It's a huge question, right? We see this incredible, mind-boggling variety of life all around us, from insects to elephants. But what's the common thread that ties it all together? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out.
So, how on earth do you even begin to make sense of millions of different organisms? Well, scientists need a system to sort them. The best way to think of it is like a giant library. So, our first step is to understand the filing system. Okay, so the most basic building block, the individual book on these shelves, is what we call a species. And the rule is actually pretty simple. If two organisms can have babies, and their babies can also have babies, they're the same species. A great example, a horse and a donkey. Yeah, they can have a baby, a mule, but that mule can't have its own babies. And that's the key. So nope, horses and donkeys are two different species. From there, we zoom out to see these 5 massive sections of the library, the kingdoms of life. You've got the animals, right? We eat stuff. Then the plants. They're the chefs making their own food from sunlight. You have fungi, like mushrooms, that absorb their food. And then you get to the microscopic worlds, the protoctists, which are complex, single-celled organisms that have a nucleus, and the prokaryotes, like bacteria, which are even simpler, no nucleus at all. This is like the first really big picture way of sorting everything alive.
Now, let's just take the animal kingdom for a second. Inside that one kingdom, there's this one huge, super simple split. Does it have a backbone or not? If it does, it's a vertebrate, like us. If it doesn't, it's an invertebrate. Just that one little feature, a backbone, is the difference between a robin and a jellyfish. Pretty wild, right?
All right, so we've got the library sorted. Now let's pull one of those books off the shelf and take a look inside. We're zooming in on a single organism to see the engine that keeps it running. So what does any living thing, I don't care if it's a squirrel or a giant sequoia tree, actually need to do to stay alive? Well, it all starts with fuel, and it turns out pretty much every organism needs a balanced diet with these 7 key things. You've got proteins for building and repair, then carbohydrates and fats, that's your pure energy. And of course, you need vitamins, minerals, fiber, and water just to keep the whole machine running smoothly. It's basically the universal recipe for life. But, and this is a really big but, here's a wild fact about that fuel. Energy transfer is incredibly inefficient. Think about it. When a cow eats grass or a lion eats that cow, more than 90% of the energy is just gone. It's lost as heat, it's used for just moving around, or it's not even digested. And that incredible inefficiency? That's the reason why food chains are usually pretty short. There's just not enough energy left to pass along. So while all that is happening on the outside, there's this constant, delicate balancing act going on inside. It's a process called homeostasis. Seriously, think of it like your body's own thermostat and chief engineer, working 24/7 to keep your temperature, your blood sugar, your water levels, everything just right, in this super narrow, stable zone. It's the absolute unsung hero of survival. All right, time to zoom in again. Weigh in. So we've looked at the whole organism, but what's it made of? Trillions of these tiny, specialized little workers. We're going down to the cellular level. Okay, check out the red blood cell. It is the perfect example of form-following function. Its whole job is to be an oxygen delivery truck. So to make more room for the cargo, it does something insane. It literally kicks out its own nucleus, its brain, just to have more space for oxygen. And in complete contrast, you have the egg cell. It's the biggest cell in the human body because its job isn't to travel, but to wait. It's basically a self-contained life support system for a brand new organism, packed with all the food it needs to get started. And then you've got its counterpart, the sperm cell. This thing is a biological missile, plain and simple. It has one job and one job only: travel. It's stripped down to the bare essentials, a head with the genetic package, a tail to move, and a middle section that's just jam-packed with mitochondria. Those are the tiny power plants, churning out energy for that long journey. So how does a cell know whether to become a delivery truck or a missile? Well, that brings us to our final, deepest level of this whole thing, the instruction manual itself. We're going inside the cell's nucleus right to the DNA. And every single instruction in that manual, that's a gene. And what is a gene? It's really just a recipe.
It's a specific length of DNA that tells the cell how to build one specific protein. That's it. All the incredible complexity of life, it just boils down to making the right proteins at the right time. Okay, but how does that recipe get from the super secure DNA library in the nucleus out to the protein factories in the rest of the cell? Well, the master blueprint, the DNA, it can't leave. So the cell makes a copy. Think of it like a photocopy. That's mRNA. This messenger molecule then zips out to a ribosome, which is basically a cellular 3D printer. The ribosome reads the code and assembles the protein, piece by piece, amino acid by amino acid. And here's where it gets really mind-blowing. Because this genetic code is pretty much universal. We can compare the entire instruction manual, the whole genome of different species. And what we find is just stunning. You ready for this? The DNA of a human and a chimpanzee is over 98% identical. That tiny, tiny 1.2% difference, that's what's responsible for everything that makes us different. Our brains, walking on two legs, all of it. Okay, we've hit the very bottom, the fundamental code. So now let's pull the camera all the way back out and see how this genetic blueprint actually shapes life in the real world. How do those tiny differences in DNA play out on a global scale? Well, those genetic differences, they show up as adaptations. See, an adaptive feature is just any trait you can inherit that gives you an edge, an advantage in surviving and having kids in your environment. It could be anything from camouflage to sharper claws. It's basically evolution's toolkit for success. You want a perfect example? Just look at these two related beetles. The ground beetle, he's got these standard sturdy legs for walking around on land. Simple enough. But its cousin, the water beetle, check out its hind legs. They've evolved into these incredible hair-fringed paddles that are perfect for swimming. Just a small tweak in the DNA, and boom, a whole new world opened up for that beetle. So this whole process of adaptation, it's all driven by something called selection. Out in the wild, it's natural selection. The environment itself does the selecting. It decides who's best suited to survive and pass on their genes. But we humans, we've kind of hijacked the process. With artificial selection, we do the choosing. We're the ones breeding dogs to be friendlier or making tomatoes bigger. But at the end of the day, both processes are doing the same thing, changing the genetic code of a population over time. So there you have it. From the 5 huge kingdoms of life, all the way down to the 4 letters of the genetic code, we've seen how life is built, how it survives, and how it changes. And you know, all of this brings us right back to us, because we're not just watching this web from the sidelines, we're a part of it. In fact, we're the one species with more power to change it than any other, which leaves us with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? What is our role, and what is our responsibility in protecting this incredible blueprint of life?